A little update on Yealous. I've had some friends say, "What's going on? You haven't posted in a couple of weeks." And that's true. Family went on a little vacation and we were gone on a cruise, and I took 10 days off, and I didn't realize how much this project consumed me until I was gone, and I didn't know how to think about anything else. We started this the last weekend in November, so December, January, February. We're about 4.5 months into it from start to finish, and it's coming along pretty good. So here's a quick update. Moved locations from the collision side, the body shop side, over to the mechanic shop, and we split it apart again, lifted the body off so we could get to the frame and everything that has to be finished up down there. We got the wiring on the motor. That's an LS 6.2 straight from GM with their wiring kit and their computer. This is the 525 horse motor. I know it's a whole lot more than we need for rock crawling, but if we need the power, we got it. That's the 4L80 transmission, the Yealous transfer case. All that stuff's in there. We've got the drive line in there. Tom Woods drive line. We're waiting on the rear. Had a little issue with it, and they're remaking it and sending it back, and that should be here Monday. The shocks finally showed up. The ORI's 20-inch. Pretty impressed with what I've seen, even though we haven't actually operated them. They're pretty impressive. I'm liking this shaft. This shock hangs on itself and it bumps out on itself. So currently it's in full bump out mode. That's how you build this suspension from Rock Slayer off-road. It's a double triangulated 4-link front and rear, and you put the Jeep at full bump when you build it, so you know exactly where your up clearance is, and then you adjust from there. So these shocks, once we hook them together, then we can put the nitrogen in them, and realistically we can make our lift be whatever lift we want. We're probably going to run about 6.5 to 7 inches from full bump to drive height, and it'll be as easy as hooking up the nitrogen hose and taking some out, or adding a little more to raise or lower your ride height. But those shocks have 20 inches of travel in them. Front bumpers are made, or the front bumper is made, and the Warren winch is the N12. I really like this unit here. That's Yankum ropes. The rope will come through here and it ropes around here and then goes back in there, but it cannot hit a rock, so the rope's protected. And in this particular application, I've cut the bumper out down in there and put a roller back in there from the old fair lead. You can see that rolling. So I'll be able to reach up in here from the bottom of the bumper and take my rope and pull it down and hook it right here into my axle, so that I can suck the front end down if I want. And that'll keep the front end from spring loading out and get me top heavy when I'm climbing something steep. The front axle's got to be put together yet. Right now it's still hollow in there. You can see all the way through. We've got to put the gears and the lockers in it, and steering, full hydro is in. One thing we still got to hook up is the hydraulic lines. They'll come out and go up into the firewall, and they're going to hook underneath the dash where the orbital valve sits, right behind the steering wheel. On the rear end, we got a fuel tank to work with the right fuel pump set up. We had the first TJ tank I put in, I thought was going to work, but it didn't have the right top for the fuel pump to deliver the right kind of pressure for that motor. This one did, and was within a half inch of the dimensions of the other fuel tank, so it fit right in. And then as the body comes down, that fuel tank sits about 3-4 inches up into the body. So I'll make a shelf once we set it down for the last time for that to sit on top of that fuel tank, and that's where the compressor and the air tank will go to run the onboard air. The rear axle was all put together from Busted Knuckle, but I had them leave the knuckles unpainted so that I could color code it to the rest of the vehicle. So we pulled it apart, and Busted Knuckle left these seals out on purpose for us so we could pull it apart and put it back together and not damage those. But we're in the going back together mode now that these have been painted. This is a 14-bolt rear steer axle, and I had Busted Knuckle put everything on the from here out to fit forward so that it would have the 8x170 millimeter bolt pattern that will match that front axle, which is an F550. And with the F550, what we did was change the hub out here and put in a hub out of an F350, I believe out of a 2005, and then we can use the caliper out of it, or the brake out of a 2004 F350, but that allowed us to still have the F550 axle, which is the strongest Dana 60 ever built, and still have an 8-bolt lug pattern out here, because the F550 has a 10-bolt pattern on the vehicles that they put those in. So with the rear, this 14-bolt matches the rear, or the front bolt pattern with the 8x170 lug pattern. So this is going back together now, and the rear steer will be complete shortly. Inside's almost together. We got the seats and the harness belts in it, and I really like how the color coordinated well. The seats in the back are the original rear seats with an Upholstery Unlimited cover on it, and the red that they use is the exact same red that Corbeau seats use in their seats as well. Right here, we've got to do a little finish work still. What this shows you is our shifter, the winner's shifter for the transmission. The one right in the center is Busted Knuckles' rear steer control, and it's got a electric over hydraulic unit sitting under the back seat right under there that will control the rear steering completely separate from the front. So that top button, you'll be able to direction your steer with that, right or left. And then on the front of that is a button right at the top that when it's pressed in, it will steer, but the minute you let that button out, it will instantly center. And then there's a switch right here for crawl mode, so you can shut that function off. So if you want to take your finger off that button and steer the rear axle one direction or the other and stay there until you steer it a different direction, you just flip the instant center function off and it'll stay right where you put it. Right there's the shifter knobs for the axle for the Atlas transfer case. Also in this Jeep, we've got a Premier power welder in the glove compartment, and we cut the glove compartment down and welded it back together so we still have some sort of a glove compartment for documents and papers. And that welder sits back in there. You don't even know it's there. It's an Armorite floor in the Jeep. I have been real happy with what we see so far. It seems to me like it's bulletproof. It's thick stuff. It's supposed to not mold or mildew if it gets wet and dries out. Still got to figure out covering the hole where originally this was a standard and the gear shift came up through there. But that won't be a problem. We're going to need a certain amount of space for switches. We've got rid of the original steering column, so there's our orbital valve, and that's a quick release steering wheel, and had to add a couple of inches to that shaft to get the steering wheel out far enough, but it sits in there now perfect for the driver's seat. And the driver's seat will move forward and back. Those corkboard seats are adjustable. They got a lumbar adjuster in it, and they got heat in them as well. You can see over there is our headlight switch, horn switch, and right-left turn signal. Mounted that up into that dash. None of these instruments are going to work because we're removing all the original wiring, and we have a cluster coming, a digital cluster that's going to fit in there, but it's not here yet, so we're waiting on it. This dash originally had a fire under it, and the guy was going to fix the wires, and he got a used wiring harness and a used dash and was going back together, but he could never make a run. These things get really touchy with everything that has to run into the OEM computers. So that's how I picked the Jeep up, was they were done messing with it, and I was under the opinion we were taking all that wiring out anyway and putting our own in, so that's what we're doing. The roll cage is a Genrai roll cage, and I really like how their stuff fits. It just always fits the vehicle nice. Doesn't have any weird bends or odd looking design in it to try and fit the body. It just looks natural, and the top fits right on and doesn't touch the roll bar anywhere. The other half to this ORI strut hooks in here. We just have to pull it off when we separate the body from the frame. Really excited to get this thing out and see this double triangulated suspension work. It's pretty impressive when you put a heister under one of the tires and lift it in the air. It's pretty cool the way everything works within itself. Without any steering, with the tires straight, we got 63 inches of up on one tire before anything else starts to leave the ground. So we should have really good articulation. But I really like how this fits in. And Noah, a rock slayer, off-road's been really good to work with. So there you have it. There's where I'm at. Those are 42-inch Maxxis Trepador stickies. Excited to get a hold of them. We hope to be done in 2 weeks. There's a lot to do, but it's doable. And if all goes well, this will be at Easter Jeep Safari in Moab. On the 3rd of April is our intentions to head down. Got some rock lights coming for it, headlights coming for it, some different tail lights coming for it. Just a lot of things we got to finish up and tie up. That may not all be completed. Our goal at this point is to get it functional so that we can drive it, see how it does, and as there always is in these kind of projects, there's going to be some tweaking and some things that we'll need to change, but we don't know that till we can take it out and try it. The back end, I'm not sure how we're going to finish that off for sure, but right now we're going to leave it like it is until we get it run through an articulation out in some rocks and see exactly where that rear tire goes when it's articulating steering as well. So made these blanks to cover up the holes and the ugliness where the original fender flares were. And they're kind of caveman, but they look a whole lot better than the holes that were there. Just made a blank for the antenna hole. And then back here, that tailgate was really bad because somebody had backed into something with it and bent it. My father's amazing at metalwork, and he straightened it. I thought I was going to have a new one, but he straightened it. And then I just made some blanks to cover up the holes where the spare tire carrier was and the bumpers for the tire.